Every famous diamond in the world is represented in this case. They are worth many millions of dollars, and trails of blood, romance, and adventure follow the history of each gem.
Diamonds have been around, well, since forever.
Diamonds are forever.
But what they symbolize and how they exchange hands has changed throughout the centuries. The earliest known diamonds date back to 4th century India. While today we know diamonds as products of mines, they were originally found in riverbeds. People would luck upon them while fishing or washing their clothes in the local tributary. Supply was naturally capped by manual extraction and lack of technology. There was no global market or pricing system, which also meant there were no intermediaries to profit.
This is good because, as we know from our previous episodes, you can't cut out the middleman.
Back then, diamonds were prized as symbols of power and divinity. They weren't everyday wear. They were unpolished, somewhat shiny, I guess, and definitely craggly rocks. They were more religious symbols than an economic good or a way to flex on other people. It wasn't until the medieval period where diamonds began to take the form of portable wealth. European merchants developed some primitive cutting techniques which made them look a lot better. And as history has shown, leave it to Europeans with boats to figure out some trade routes to capitalize on the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like Europeans with boats are responsible for at least like 60% of world history, and not always in a good way.
In this era, diamonds first became a store of value for the elite, most of which were shipped over from India. They could be easily hidden and transported and function like pre-modern bearer assets. So we've gone from spiritual symbols to financial instruments reserved for the really rich people. And then the first big supply shock came in the 1700s in Brazil. Massive diamond deposits were found in the earth, giving way to the mining industry, which Portugal nationalized almost immediately. India's century-long riverbed monopoly collapsed as the market shifted from ultra-rare to still kind of rare, but also available if you had the money and knew the right people. As a result, it was the first time that oversupply risk appeared. Then, in the mid-1800s, South Africa stumbled upon their own diamond deposits and took manual extraction from mines to the next level. The Brazilian and Portuguese industries were still rudimentary in terms of mining techniques, and the supply chain was incredibly fragmented. And this is where the beer shows up.
I'm gonna guess that this isn't the fun kind of beer that makes the mountains blue when it's cold.
I'm more of a Miller Lite guy myself. Founded by Cecil Rhodes, a British-born imperialist, the company verticalized the supply chain and consolidated claims throughout South Africa, eliminating competitors in the process.
This headgear tops the Wesselton mine shaft, which bores 1,600 feet deep into the diamond-rich earth.
Rhodes's core insight was actually more financial than industrial. While everyone was obsessed with finding better ways to get diamonds out of the ground faster, he realized they were dealing with an economic problem if they were successful in digging. Assuming better mining, the key to the diamond industry was no longer finding more diamonds, but selling them without causing the price to cave in on itself. The reality was unit economics got worse the more you succeeded in pulling these things out of the earth. Kind of a catch-22. Well, the racist opportunist he was, I had to call that out before giving this guy too much credit, because he had pretty deplorable views hinged on white supremacy. Rhodes realized that unless production was centralized, price discipline would be impossible. You'd have a sprint to the bottom.
I'm sure every founder who's had a competitor undercut their pricing on AWS knows exactly what this feels like.
Very true, Ben. And Rhodes in many ways was the first venture-backed miner. Most miners were self-funded at the time, living hand to mouth, and selling as soon as they found something. They were very cash flow dependent. Rhodes saw that he who could wait the longest to sell could control the market. So he raised capital from London using a mix of debt and equity. That equity came from none other than the Rothschild dynasty.
Shouldn't they call them the Roth's children?
Much like Silicon Valley Bank of our times, the Rothschild was not a retail bank. It did not lend like a commercial lender. They were a form of flexible institutional capital with long-term time horizons. Between 1880 and 1888, Rhodes used this capital to go on a buying spree, consolidating claims and performing a PE-like roll-up of family-owned claims. It was the definition of inorganic growth. What he observed were the inefficiencies of thousands of individual claims paired with the price volatility, which was causing diamonds to trade at times like a bad commodity. He set out to separate ownership and distribution and then to take a meaningful stake in each. Most finance teams aren't underperforming, they're actually under-equipped. The problem isn't the people, it's what they're being asked to do. Because there are two kinds of finance work. The kind that moves the business forward and the kind that just keeps it from falling flat on its face. And too many finance teams are buried in the second kind, and they call it a good week when they just get through it. Expense reports that take longer than the trips they cover, spend policies living in PDFs that no one reads, A 3-day approval process for a $40 receipt. That's a lot of burritos, but not worth it. Month-end close that stretches into weeks. These aren't edge cases. They're the default state of finance at most growing companies. And the cost isn't just the time. It's what your best people aren't doing while they're buried in the wrong work. You become what you spend on. And right now, too many finance teams are spending on maintenance instead of momentum. And that is why I use Brex, agentic finance that captures receipts automatically, enforces policy before the spend happens, and closes your books in minutes rather than weeks. So your finance team stops spending on maintenance and starts spending on momentum. 35,000 companies like OpenAI, Coinbase, Anthropic, and DoorDash already run on Brex because high-density talent deserves some high-leverage systems. It's time to get Brex AF. Can't believe they let me say that. Learn more at brex.com/metrics. That is brex.com/metrics.